Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing tonight? It is Wednesday, so you know what that means. It's time for the internet's favorite movie centric list making podcast, 10 to 1. I am one of your hosts, Josh, joined as always by Jen.
The 1 year older than she was last week at this time.
Yes,
Well, not
you celebrated a birthday.
exactly, but yeah, something like that. It was a fun birthday. I had a wonderful time. It was absolutely awesome. Yeah, nothing
Um,
like a good birthday party to remind you of one, your own mortality, but two, how much you love the people around you. It was
wait,
very
wait,
cool.
wait, wait. You have birthday parties?
I do. Oh my gosh. Not only did we have a birthday party, but my kid made me this amazing castle cake and I got a teapot, which man, you know you're getting older when you like a good teapot, but it's super cool. And I don't know. I got a bunch of stuff. Very cool stuff by the way. Just made me very happy. And yes, they do throw me birthday parties. Like, I mean,
Huh,
I'll admit, I cooked my own dinner for the birthday party because I didn't trust anybody else to cook it,
fair
but
enough.
it was delish. And I got exactly what I wanted.
I haven't had a birthday party since I was like 22.
Oh my god, you are totally missing out. Sometimes when my family can't get together, right, it gets a little bit staggered. But I always figure out how to get somebody and usually two people together to do a Lord of the Rings marathon. So there's also that. That's also a super cool one.
Oh, 3 years ago, a friend took me to lunch. Does that count?
Oh, yeah, sure. Like you could
Awesome.
go with that. Why not?
Yeah, I feel weird, planning a party for myself. It seems I don't know. It seems awkward, and I also don't have people nearby to do it.
Uh,
So it's not like there would be really anybody to invite.
I have no such hubris, and I've got. I don't want to say it's a big family, but it's bigger than I think maybe most. So, yeah, so it kind of works
It's like
because
my
they
kids
feel
already live here,
compelled.
so
People in my family feel compelled to come because yeah, if they don't, where are they going to go for Thanksgiving? So
see,
it
I
kind of
don't
works.
do that. I don't do Thanksgiving.
Mm,
I don't do family gatherings.
I see. Well, I mean, I guess that makes sense.
So yeah,
Sorta.
like I said, my kids live here, so you know, don't really need to go anywhere.
See, basically, what you're saying is you have a captive audience, and so there is absolutely zero reason for you not to demand that you have a party. All you have to do is just run to the store, grab the things, and say, okay, here you go. When I wake up in the morning, I hope this place is going to be decorated super awesome. And of course, yeah, it won't be, but it'll be decorated anyway.
Now, I don't want to make it sound like I have some sort of awful, sad existence, and I'm just like nobody loves me. No, it's not the case. Everything is exactly the way I prefer it. Although birthday parties sound pretty cool. So for
Well,
the handful of
let me
people
just
I have
say,
around here,
let me just say that it was especially cool because as I get older, my I also feel like my the people around me make it more and more special because just them being there is really what I want. Like I don't ask anything of anybody. Like I said, I even make the food.
I want a birthday present.
So, yeah. I mean, I'm at the age where, if I want something if I really want something, I buy it. It's
Yeah,
not, I
yeah,
don't,
pretty much.
I don't really get into the, oh my God, and also my kids are, a bit older now. So I'm not like, buying school shoes or
Mhm. Oh
it's
yeah,
not like
I
that
mean all the
anymore.
time.
See, I mean, it's just, I don't, I don't have that anymore, so I get to focus a little bit more on, did I really want this? Man, this is going to make me really sound old. Do I want that new set of sheets? Yeah, okay. Well, I just go buy them. Did they cost 120 bucks? Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. All right. I can budget that. That's going to be fine.
Kids did
No
manage
kids
to
back.
finagle me a PS5.
I actually spent $120 on some sheets, and no regrets, no regrets. But as I look back on it now, I'm like, yeah, what was going on there? Got a little too picky.
So yeah, it's quite the opening we have there.
Anyway, this definitely is a great segue because, you know, do you know that birthdays are basically successive, right? So, you have one and
Mm-hmm.
then you kind of have to just keep moving on into the next one. And
Uh-huh.
for some movies, that is how it progresses too. I mean, you get one movie and then all of a sudden you've got so many more.
That's
And this
true.
week, that's what we are going to talk about. We are going to talk about movies that are favorite. Well, I started out thinking about this as a franchise situation, but then I was like, no, you know what? It's not just a franchise situation because some movies that have more than four movies in the universe are like they're not exactly all created in the same world. So yeah, some of mine definitely same movie franchise idea, but not exactly all made together in successive organization. Also, I was thinking this week that because we're talking about movies that had more than four, that we should definitely hone in on our favorite movie of the four or of the four plus or whatever, because otherwise we're just sort of putting a list out of franchises that we love.
Well, the um the idea was our favorite fourth movies.
Oh, does it have to be the fourth?
The fourth,
Oh,
the
because
fourth
man,
movie.
that really changes up my entire. Oh, wow. I don't feel like the fourth of any movie was particularly wonderful, except maybe one. Oh, maybe two. But that's not going to make a whole list. Well, we'll just have to make accommodations as we go, as we always do on this podcast. We'll let the podcast gods decide how this works.
Well, that I'm going to just throw away this introduction that I wrote. Then came prepared
I really didn't.
means nothing.
I really didn't. I didn't take that as the assignment. I thought it was just okay. If your franchise has more than four movies or four movies and more, what's the favorite? Because I can't imagine that we could. I don't know. I mean, I guess I could reconstruct my list and just sort of like be like, yeah, okay, this fourth movie was like, yay, but man, I didn't like the fourth movie of a lot of franchises. Even though the franchise had more than four, I didn't particularly like the fourth.
I thought it was going to be difficult, but then I was just sitting at work one day and I'm like, no, I should try to make a list of me make lists. Who would have thunk it? I should make a list of stuff that has more than four movies. And then I started with one, and then another, and then a page and a half later, I'm like, oh, okay, this, yeah, I guess I do have plenty to work with here.
But then if you have to further narrow it down to you have to choose the fourth movie of the franchise
Mm-hmm.
be your favorite, then it starts to get sticky.
Well,
You
it doesn't.
know?
The fourth doesn't have to be your favorite of the franchise. It's just
Right, right,
fourth
that's what I was
movies.
saying. That
That
but th but that's what I was saying. I was saying that yeah, the movies have four in the or more plus in the franchise. But if we say which one of the franchise is our favorite, then that feels I don't know. That was more what I was thinking, but I can still just say what the fourth movie of the franchise is. All right, we got this. We got this. I got this. I didn't, but I do now.
I had everything set up. I was going to have give this nice little spiel like Jen always does. The importance of fourth movies and what it means to the franchise. Yeah, it's just I was
I
going to
am
do
so
that.
sorry if I messed that up.
Threw that all out the window.
I am so sorry if I totally screwed up the entire podcast feel. This is what happens when you get older. You just completely disregard the rules. You know, walk in front of everybody else, upend their podcast. I mean, man.
That explains the socio-political landscape so well.
See?
So Josh's Forest list and Jen's wacky list of chaos.
I'm sure it'll be chaotic fun.
All right. So the lists are prepped, ready to go to be added on as the show goes on. For those of you that want to see what these lists look like, go to letterbox.com, follow 1021pod, where all of our lists are available.
This week in particular will definitely be fun.
It's going to be something.
No, it's going to be fun. I've already said it. And so it shall be. Yes, it's going to be fun.
Well, you're the boss.
See, there we go.
All right, so who should start off this?
You should go first because I went first last week.
Fair enough. Number 10 of 4s for me. My number 10 is a movie that has been talked about before. So I'm going to keep it pretty short and simple. Vegas Vacation. It is the fourth installment in the Vacation movie franchise. I did a little bit of digging, and it seems some people say that the popularity of Vegas Vacation is the why they, followed it up with a fifth movie in the franchise. Yeah, but that was like 18 years later, and pretty sure it was just a, sort of soft reboot to see if it would still stick with Ed Helms playing Russ as an adult. I'm guessing it didn't, because 8 years after that, and we got no follow-up. So Vegas Vacation, honestly, it might be my favorite vacation movie other than Christmas Vacation, because then Christmas Vacation, you just can't beat that. It's a holiday tradition, and there's a reason for that. But Vegas Vacation tones it down, I think. And as I get older, I don't mind being toned down a bit. And quite frankly, for the longest time, it was the only one I owned on DVD, so it's the one I watched, the most. Other than Christmas Vacation, which I watch every year. It's a good fourth movie in the sense that you get more antics, and it follows that. Jen, you remember, like in the late 80s, early 90s, there was this whole thing about everybody goes to Vegas and hangs out with Wayne Newton, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, this basically follows that formula. They're seeing the sights, visiting the Hoover Dam. Wayne Newton shows up. It's just a Vegas thing. Whenever Vegas is in TV and movies, they do the same stuff every time. When Cousin Eddie shows up looking for the damn bait, that's always a joy. So Vegas Vacation is my number 10.
Okay, so the Vacation franchise altogether, I think, is fun. I do love that franchise. The same shtick. They can do it over and over again, and it's still funny. So there must have been some magic there, because, yeah, each movie is not I mean, different themes, but they do a lot of the same shtick. It's still funny. It does not matter how many times they do it. So, good choice. Very good choice.
Thank you.
Okay. My number 10 is a movie that, interestingly enough, was really one of the. I don't know why it was so funny, because when I look back on it now, I'm not sure if I think it's like so funny anymore, but it still brings me joy. Um, it starred Steve Guttenberg. For a while, it was Bobcat Goldthwait, who's also just so freaking funny. And a cast of characters. Sharon Stone was in the fourth one, which was called Citizens on Patrol, Police Academy. And
Crossover.
Police Academy Citizens on Patrol was pretty hilarious to me. Well, then I won't give it a ton of airtime here since it is my number 10. It I will say that I really did like this movie for I think one of the things that I liked about this movie the most is that it was not afraid to laugh at itself. That it basically took everything that was kind of funny about the original police academies and it expanded on them, um basically saying, see what we did here, this was funny then, and it was like funny enough that we're going to make fun of making fun of it. It was just fun. I really liked this movie a ton. um I also really liked the idea of basically the cops being little more than Keystone Cops until they really all had to pull together. And even then, it was just happenstance and scotch tape that kept the whole thing together. It's hard not to love these characters. They're such oddballs and screwballs that you just can't help but love them. This movie was just so. It, at the time that it came out, I can remember thinking this is hilariously silly, but I also, as I've aged, as my kids watched it and stuff, it hasn't aged perfectly, but it's still a fun watch. So I'll let Josh expand more on this, but my number 10 choice is Police Academy 4 Citizens on Patrol. I especially got to call out Commandant Eric Lassard for being one of the coolest characters who has just the fewest lines ever. Just absolutely think that that was really perfect because, yeah, it just makes him look like he is so d- absolutely dumb, but somehow he gets the job done. So
Yes. Is that a good
it
impression?
still makes me laugh. Yes, it still makes me laugh. And also, I also just have to call out Moses Hightower as a character. His biggest shtick is I'm tall, and somehow that works. Just like, okay, hey, this is it. This does the trick. I do love it.
Uh, Excellent choice.
If you do say so yourself. And crossover, yeah, that I think that will totally work. Can't wait to hear what you have to say about it.
Unfortunately, it's not my number 9. Um, I seem to appreciate it a tad bit more. Uh,
Okay.
just throwing that out there.
Okay.
Steve
Maybe
Gutenberg is waiting in the other room for me.
I'll try to guess where it fits on your list.
We're gonna play canasta.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, what is your number 9 if it's not Police Academy, Citizens on Patrol?
My number 9 is a movie that, if you wanted to make a top 10 list of all of its movies this summer, you can do that. My number 9 is Fast and Furious. Not to be confused with The Fast and the Furious, or Too Fast, Too Furious, or Fast or Furious, or whatever other combination. That series has the weirdest naming schemes ever.
Yeah, they got a little weird about naming. Yeah. Yeah, I what they needed to do is hire an expert punster to really make them work. But
Mm-hmm.
no, they didn't. They didn't. The only franchise that does a worse job of naming its sequel movies or its successive movies is Riddick.
Let's see,
That
it's Pitch Black, Riddick.
and then the Chronicles of Riddick. I might be wrong, but I think you might want to start with the Chronicles of Riddick, or maybe just Riddick.
I
I
think
don't know.
Pitch Black is the first.
Yeah, Pitch Black is the first.
I think then
But I
it's
also feel like
Chronicles Riddick, and then Riddick.
Pitch Black was also more. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, it was
And
just
using
as
that
confusing.
naming scheme, the next movie should be Chronicles of Pitch, and then
Yeah,
let's see,
or
Pitch
Pitch
Riddick.
Riddick. Pitch Riddick. No, we're just kidding. We love you, Vin Diesel. Okay, well, I love you, Vin Diesel. So just
Come on
had to
the
throw
show,
that out
make a list. It's all
there.
about
Yeah, come
Finn.
make a list with us. Yes, absolutely. We'll even give you Riddick as the top line. Yep, we'll do it,
He's like, all my movies are Vin Diesel movies. Okay, sure.
including the Fast and the Furious. So
We were talking about movies with strong female leads, but yeah, we'll go with all your movies.
yeah, we could pretend. We got imaginations. We can make this work.
Um,
Speaking of Vin Diesel, back to the Fast and the Furious.
Fast and Furious. It is, well, of course, the fourth installment in the series. Came out in 2009. Now, the reason this is on the list isn't because of the added characters. It became, I guess, sort of a tradition now, where suddenly somebody comes back, you know, uh, or somebody that we didn't know existed suddenly very much exists and is a big deal. That's sort of where this all began. No, I'm adding it because Fast and Furious is sort of where it went off the rails, I think would be the best way to put it. Because before then, it was just a movie about street racers that did other crimes, but at the end of the day, everyone was just racing. That's where the forgive me, that's where the rubber meets the road. And in Fast and Furious, it takes this weird skid. I hate myself for this. Into heist sort of action territory where it focused less on racing and more on really big sequences that involved unbelievable car things. Now, it won't be the only movie that does this on my list, but it marked a very different tone for the franchise, and I would say it re-energized the franchise. Don't hate me for this, but I guess you could say that's when they hit the NOS and pushed the franchise over to credible profit. I'm not. No, I'm done. I'm done. No more puns about this movie. Anyway, the point is Fast and Furious, the fourth movie, it changed directions for the franchise as a whole. And a lot of people will say that it was when The Rock came in Fast Five that really took hold. Sure, but without this one setting that tone, nothing else would exist. It would. I'm pretty sure it would just be a series that went straight to, I guess at this point, straight to streaming as Fast and Furious subtitle, without any kind of effort put into. I'm really giving them a lot of credit for the effort they put into writing these things, but the effort put into creating the stunt spectacular that we've all grown to know and love. Fast and Furious, my number 9.
All right. It's Fast and Furious is not my favorite franchise. In fact, it didn't even make it to my list. Mostly just because I'm just not a big car person. I don't know. There's something about that culture that just kind of drives me nuts. But I
It
know
drives
lots of
you
people.
nuts.
Yep. See, I'm picking
You're
up where
doing it
your
too.
puns left off. Well, I had to. You gave up on the puns. I have to.
Yeah.
We got to get at least some in.
I was leaning
Um.
too hard into it, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll just hit the e-brake on this one and do a 180. Okay. All right. All right. All right. All right. But anyway, my number nine, where the rubber meets the road, is a movie that I actually kind of hate. I hate it because I love this franchise so much, and I don't know what they were smoking when they came up with this, but I don't think it was really super helpful. I will say that this movie actually, in terms of the cast was amazing. And if it had been any other movie, this could have been unbelievably great. It had Anton Yelchin in it. Yelkin in it. It had Helena Bottom Carter in it. It had Sam Worthington in it, and it had Christian Bale in it. And altogether, that would have been a great cast. I do feel like there could have been some awesome stuff going on here, but they missed the mark completely with the franchise because the storytelling was tired, I think, but more than tired, it was lackluster. It just missed the point of the franchise. So, I mean, it was a movie and it was good in all of the ancillary kind of things that make a movie good. There were great FX, there were great some lines, there were good little nuggets of ideas that never got followed up on, but then they just got too lost in the endless tropes, which I think this franchise is also sort of famous for, but also then famous for making the tropes not feel so tropish. I am talking about Terminator 4 Salvation. Um, I did not like Terminator 4 Salvation. Um, and it extends beyond, I think, some of the just the stuff that I just said. There is no really strong central protagonist that is female in this, and I feel like that's actually what made the other Terminator movies work. They worked because Sarah Connor was at least a part of it in some way, or they had another very strong female presence in it, and it counterbalances what I think this world is, which is very, I guess I could just say, like, high testosterone, kind of world. And that's great, but it has to have some kind of counterbalance, and there isn't any. Even the one that Josh just talked about, Fast and Furious, has oftentimes has really strong female centers that kind of balance things out just a little bit. Um, the other thing that this movie really suffers from is it is unable to escape what I think many other, not all other, but many other Terminator movies really seek to do, which is sort of get away from the paradox idea. Because although the paradox of time travel is present, especially in the first Terminator, we understand that that paradox is essential to understanding what is happening in the world. And so as we move into the rest of the franchise, we just sort of take it as, okay, this is what happened. It was important that this paradox happened. But then they get too lost in Terminator 4 in the idea that, okay, well, now John Connor, who's played by Christian Bale, has to figure out whether this person that he meets are they from the past? Are they actually who they say they are? Or is this some kind of trick? And unfortunately, that I think really trips the entire movie up and creates a problem for the franchise going forward. I would just like to erase Terminator 4 from the franchise itself and just move right into Terminator 5 and say, okay, this one actually didn't exist. It also really doesn't do anything canon for the world. It doesn't create anything for the Terminator universe that I feel like, was absolutely necessary and needed to be there. Even the idea of, the birth of Skynet, which we've done sort of ad nauseum, doesn't feel as I mean, I hate to use another pun, but it doesn't feel organic. Despite the fact that they killed a guy on death row, blah blah blah. It's not. It didn't. It never came across to me. Terminator 4 never came across to me as this is essential for the Terminator universe. Now, I included it because this is one of those movies that's on my list as being this franchise had more than four movies, and I love this franchise so much. I love the Terminator idea. The science fiction is so solid in this franchise. There is something that is the cautionary tale of nuclear war, of AI, of human the human existence as being the resistance, which sometimes I feel like we lose sight of. But those things become really important, and I love everything else about the Terminator world. But Terminator 4 just sort of veers off course. So while I chose it for my number nine, and this is definitely a franchise that has more than four films, the number four film of this particular franchise didn't quite hold up for me the way that most of the others did. So, Terminator 4, Salvation is the name of the movie. And no offense to anybody who was in that movie, y'all were great. Just the movie needed some, I don't know, it needed something else. It needed some other uh catalyst to make it kind of work, and in my opinion it was the strong female lead. So there we go.
You know what it really needed?
What did it need?
It needed you to stay out of my eye line.
Okay then.
Sorry, that was terrible, terrible impression. Where's
Yeah.
Rachel? There we go. That's better.
Oh, good lord. I'm not a huge okay, this is controversial, I don't know. I'm not a huge Christian Bale fan. I've never been a huge Christian Bale fan. But I respect a lot of the movies that he's in because they do seem to channel his ability as an actor pretty well. But
Mm-hmm.
in Terminator 4, I never felt like he was John Connor, ever. I felt like he was wearing John Connor skin or something. Like it just didn't work. And I don't exactly understand. I think part of it is part of the allure of John Connor is he has this affect, which is I genuinely love humanity. In every other Terminator movie, mostly, John Connor has this feeling, the feeling of humanity is the most important. And with Christian Bale, it felt like, yeah, okay, whatever, we'll save these losers. And I just didn't like what? Where did all this come from? Did John Connor suddenly like get assimilated by Skynet and spit back out again and now he's different? Because he just doesn't seem like the same character. So yeah.
I will say, confession time. It is the one Terminator movie that I have not seen.
Mm.
I don't know why. I love the Terminator movies, but for some reason that one, it's just like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, I feel like you may not have seen it because it really isn't. It's not. It's not a strong entry into the franchise. It's a very weak entry into the franchise. And I don't. Again, I don't. If you take little bits and pieces of the movie, it it's it can be good. Like I said, the effects are really good, and some of the ideas that center around nuclear war are also pretty solid. But the idea of Terminator and then its integration with Skynet is so important. And I feel like they treated that so haphazardly that it didn't make sense with the rest of the universe. And I mean, you can have that happen in a time travel franchise, but you have to explain it properly. And they just didn't. It didn't really, to me, it didn't make any sense in the Terminator universe of things, especially not when we've been building up John and Sarah Connor as sort of like, you know, the effective saviors of humanity. Yeah, things just didn't make sense in this movie. So, but
All
that doesn't
right.
mean that you shouldn't love the franchise. Love the franchise.
By the
Yes.
franchise, you mean one and two.
Well, I mean, there's also, what was the latest Terminator? Um, there's another Terminator. What is the other Terminator that came out? Uh, Terminator Dark Fate, I think. Because there's Terminator, Judgment Day, Rise of the Machines, Salvation, which is like right in the middle. And then
Genesis.
Genesis. I totally forgot about Genesis, and then Dark Fate. So there's all of those except Salvation are actually pretty good. Um, Dark Fate is actually even interesting in and of itself because it tells a pretty cool story, but Salvation just feels like it was thrown together to sort of like, okay, well, we don't want to lose the rights for this, so let's just throw something together real quick, and yeah, then it doesn't have to necessarily be awesome. I mean, they spent a lot of money on that film, you know.
Mhm.
It just didn't stand up. So,
Salvation does kind of stand out as an oddball.
it does.
Looking
Yeah,
at
it
all of
does.
the movie one sheets.
Yeah, it definitely does. But whatever. There you go. There's mine.
So mine number 8.
Number 8.
It's a series that listeners of the show should know that I enjoy, um, up to and including this one, directed by Rob Marshall. I'm talking about, of course, Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. Now, is it, on the same level as some of the earlier works? No, no. But one of the things that this particular movie does as a fourth in the franchise, one of the things that you should really understand is that when there's a fourth movie, uh, it's usually for a couple of different reasons. One is obviously, hey, these other three made money. Let's make more money. That's that's always going to be number one. Uh, Now, story wise, it can go in a couple of different directions. One, it's maybe a standalone where you're just seeing more of the same stuff, or maybe it's there to set off a new set of stories, or maybe it's a logical continuation of what's come before it. Now the question is, which one is which one is on Stranger Tides? I would I would say it fits along the lines of more of a standalone thing, more of a let's just keep making these kind of things. And I'm not going to hit on it because I absolutely enjoy seeing Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow uh, any day of the week. And the fact that we move away from some of the more familiar faces in the first three movies is, you know what? I'm going to say it's a little refreshing. You really only need Jack to tie everything together because Pirates of the Caribbean, the movies are about Jack. Everybody else is just ancillary, and to have to be able to tie in uh, to well-known bits of pirate lore. Uh, well, the Fountain of Youth isn't so much pirate lore as it is Florida lore. I've been there. It's in St. Augustine. Tickets are moderately priced. Check it out. and Blackbeard. Seeing those two pieces come together to
Did did I lose you, Josh? Hello? Are you there?
it's good to have refreshing faces, new people to follow, new people for Jack to interact with. One of the things that did make the trilogy so much fun is the fact that there were these, running gags since the first movie to the third movie, of how Jack interacts with the people around him, and those that get to know him the best, uh, just they go from you know confusion as to Jack's behavior to kind of in awe of the way he acts, and then all the way back around to confusion again. We don't have that familiarity with most of the new cast and Jack, even though you know it's one of those things where they say, oh, that, like I said with what was it, Fast and Furious. Suddenly, people that have never been talked about before are integral to one of your main characters' life stories. Oh, did we forget to mention this character before? Well, they're here now, so let's throw in a little backstory there. Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides is one of my favorite fourth movies, purely because it is just a fun Jack Sparrow adventure that basically stands alone, and that's why it's my number eight.
I totally would have picked Pirates of the Caribbean if I felt like I I don't know. I waffled about that one. I really wanted to pick it. Mm, but there, I guess I was a little bit too taken with some other movies, and so it just didn't quite make the list. Although I'm always down to watch a good Pirates of the Caribbean marathon. There's something for everyone to love, truly.
You like big ships, you cannot lie.
It's true. And also, there's something unique. I mean, honestly, I don't know. Something gets unleashed with Johnny Depp when he is playing Jack Sparrow, which it just works. And you can either love Johnny Depp or hate him. It doesn't matter. That character is insanely iconic and just makes everything work. Like you said, in all the movies, it is even when it's not about Jack Sparrow, it is about Jack Sparrow. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, I absolutely love it. Um, okay. So my number 8 movie is this movie is so contentious. Um, I think over time, this movie has become less and less contentious and less hated. Um, I feel like it was incredibly hated when it came out. In fact, I know it was incredibly hated when it came out. I remember every adult around me being incensed, upset. Uh, how dare they? Why would they do this? It's terrible. And meanwhile, I was just having a good time. Uh, Also, it was the first time that I ever thought row, row, row your boat was done in a movie cool. So that should give you a hint. I am talking about Star Trek IV The Voyage Home. Yes, the flip around the sun maneuver, the we must save the whales, which was, on everyone's mind in the late 80s. Um, the movie was not put together by Greenpeace, but it might as well have been. Um, they did weird stuff in The Voyage Home. I mean, they really did. And I love Star Trek's idea. The Orville has the same idea with its, fascination for Earth culture, especially in the 20th century, as, being the be all and end all. It's hilarious. And, I don't know. Sometimes it feels so weird, but it's just really cool to kind of like be, when you're living through it, you're like, oh, yeah, I'm one of the cool kids because I'm living through this right now. Um, and some of the stuff is ridiculous, I mean, they, do all of this call out culture, like, punk rock and stuff. But the message is truly wholesome. And the idea that they are climbing, uh, in, I think they're climbing in Yosemite, right? They're climbing El Capitan. The idea that they're doing this as sort of like a way to embrace their own mortality, morality too, maybe. It's like it's these are endless Star Trek um, features that every movie has to have. I again, this is not the greatest in the Star Trek entry by a long shot. I mean, like, I almost feel like this movie sort of sinks to the bottom of the list, except for maybe the first one. Um, but it has a place. It definitely kept the franchise going, number one, which I do think is important. And I I think when we look back on it now, the message of the voyage home was not as it wasn't as crazy as maybe we once thought it was. Like, I think at the time it maybe made people feel something different than it does now. And I don't just mean nostalgically. I mean, sometimes when we're living through something, we tend to look at it with a little bit more either disdain or, oh, hey, why are you trying to call attention to that? Wow, is this a political movie or whatever? And then you look back on it and it's like, well, yeah, maybe not. Maybe that's not where it was going at all. And I kind of feel like that does sort of happen. Um, I also really like this movie a lot because at the time, and this is pure nostalgia, at the time that this movie came out, right before this, the Space Shuttle Challenger had exploded. And it almost felt at the time like we needed a movie that was the space trope that could give us hope again. And I don't know, there was something about the timing for this that just felt kind of right. Um, it there was just something amazing about that particular synchronicity, or yeah, I guess. Um, I I won't say that I loved everything about this movie, but I will say that what they did right. Um, there it completes a circle of the Wrath of Khan that I feel like was important to complete, and I think it gives us a lighter moment in the Star Trek universe than we're used to seeing. And for that, I don't know. I appreciate it. Again, this is not the best of the Star Trek movies, but I can find many reasons to like this movie by itself, as the fourth in the series, as whatever. I can find plenty of goodness to indulge in this movie. But again, it definitely isn't my favorite in the franchise. It's just, as the fourth movie, this one definitely, it has its own charm. It has its own sort of, almost like, I don't know, folksy feeling to it. It's weird. It's very weird. But I do love it. I love all of the callbacks that we get to them saving the whales in subsequent Star Trek universe calls, like even in the different series where they, talk about the maneuver, about slingshotting around the sun. And I really do like this idea that saving the whales did something to the universe that they still talk about even in all the other Star Wars franchises. That actually is kind of cool, and obviously it was a big canon piece of the Star Trek universe. So, Star Trek for The Voyage Home definitely I think sits pretty comfortably at my number 8 spot.
Crossover.
Oh,
So that's why I can't quite chime in just yet.
well, I'm assuming that you liked it if it's on your list.
Yes, yes, but
Probably
it
for
is
different reasons.
probably. Um, but it's not my number 7.
Okay.
My number 7 is yet another movie that, if you want to see the latest installment of, you won't have much longer to wait because it drops this year. My number 7 is Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol.
Oh.
Now, the thing about the Mission Impossible, I mean, let me start up front. My favorite Mission Impossible movie is still the first one. Uh, no doubt. The relationship, between Ethan Hunt and Phelps is it's interesting to watch play out on screen, especially with Tom Cruise and John Voight in their respective roles, and seeing a team get so thoroughly dismantled straight up, you know, gadgets and the high spot. The high spot was dangling from an air conditioner. That was the big stunt. So fast forward to 2011, and we have Ghost Protocol. This is kind of like Fast and Furious, where the story sort of takes not necessarily a backseat to the action, but the action is definitely um, more centric to what's going on screen, especially when it comes to. It's almost like you can see, someone in the writers' room saying, "Hey, we're going to make another Mission Impossible movie. What is the big stunt going to be? What are we going to center all of this around?" Um, and for this one, it was dangling from the tallest building in the world. And watching that on a big screen, it makes you dizzy when you realize just how high up that actually is. Hmm. So, excuse me. The the idea that Tom Cruise in 2023 is still making Mission Impossible movies is not only mind blowing to an extent, but they've kept the formula from Ghost Protocol in place, where they're sort of telling this story about Ethan Hunt. Even though he has a team, he's still kind of a lone man on a mission. But it's all centered around one huge spectacle that's going to come at some point in the movie. And this is kind of the origins of what the modern day Mission Impossible looks like. In a Mission Impossible 2, there was some motorcycle stunty stuff. Was that the one with the cliff with the rock climbing? I don't remember. At there does come a point when things kind of start fading together, because the third one had Philip Seymour Hoffman, and I thought, oh, they're gonna do this thing where they're gonna get like a really cool bad guy. Um, doesn't really meet that standard in the fourth one, but just the fact that they found a way. Mission Impossible is like Madonna, every decade or so, it just seems to find a way to reinvent itself, and it's probably about due for that again if it keeps going. I don't remember if this is going to be the last movies coming up, but Ghost Protocol marks the change and signified a new direction for Mission Impossible, and that's why it's my number 7.
Hmm. I myself am not a huge fan. I guess in the same vein as Fast and the Furious, I'm not a huge fan of Mission Impossible. Um, yeah. I can take it or leave it. But it's fun. I mean, it's a fun Saturday afternoon popcorn flick for me. But I just I don't know, not
I
super into it.
let me see if I can analyze what you're thinking here. Mission Impossible as well as Fast and the Furious have had a tendency to put, you know, logic and story kind of on the back burner. I mean, it's still there, it's still part of the meal, but
Yeah.
that's not why it makes $1 billion. It's because they do insane things on the screen, things that you go, I have to see it on the big screen. That is a theater experience, even though it doesn't really, move the needle as far as plot or writing goes. Just the idea that I can't believe they filmed that is what sells tickets.
Yeah, I think that might be about right.
Oh, and where you tie in, you um, love ships and you love a great story. I'm not sure what the order is there, but uh, Mission Impossible, Fast and Furious have neither of those things.
Although uh, one of my movie choices, one of my franchise choices, is about cars. So it's not it's not the cars. It's not even the energy of it. It's definitely something else. Because the movie that I'm gonna actually talk about next, um, I think will
Maybe crossover for
make
us.
you wonder whether this is what it is. I'm not, and and again, uh, I'm not really sure that this is like my favorite of this franchise, but okay, we're just gonna go with it and see what happens.
Yay!
Okay, um, so my number 7 movie, and I'm definitely because one of these movies, let's just call this dystopian because it's definitely very dystopian. And it is also very heavily car related. In fact, cars are basically the driving, pardon the pun, force of this entire franchise. Um, but the third of these or I'm sorry, the fourth of these movies is like one that I feel like maybe most people haven't even seen. And so I don't know if this is a great, I mean, it's the fourth movie, but oh man, I feel really weird about saying that this is like on my list. But I put this franchise as being one of my favorites because it definitely has more than four movies um, on my list. And then I'll tell you what my favorite one is. Okay. So uh, it's called Death Race. And Death Race is all, pun intended, high octane fun. I mean, it can't, I feel like it doesn't get any better than Death Race. I mean, it starts out with Death Race 2000. That was released in 1975, and it is kind of like the precursor to GTA, the game Grand Theft Auto. But in movie form, and it is crazy dystopian, but it's also a serious political commentary or a social commentary, I should say. And it really kind of makes you on purpose feel icky about a lot of stuff. And I kind of love that because anything that sort of draws attention to what it is that you're not supposed to be looking at can sometimes be super cool in making you focus attention to it. So I really, really, really do love this whole franchise. But the fourth movie, and this is where it kind of gets a little bit unexpected because this isn't how I organized my list, is a movie called Death Race 3 Inferno. It came at there's a Death Race 2000, 1975, Death Race in 2008, Death Race 2 in 2010, And then there is Death Race 3 Inferno. Now, Death Race 3 Inferno, which is the fourth film of the franchise, is, I don't know how to describe this particular movie other than to say it was not super memorable. Um, it's it doesn't even really have like a cast of people that everybody kind of remembers. It's kind of, I feel like this movie is very front loaded with the idea of Death Race, but then it sort of stops being um what makes Death Race really good, because even though it still has Frankenstein in it, which all Death Race movies pretty much have, it kind of deals with something a little bit more, I don't know, like it becomes less character driven and more world driven. And I don't feel like that's what makes the Death Race franchise work super well. Um there's also this sort of idea that the navigators are sort of like at war with each other, and that also is like kind of odd. It doesn't exactly work, because it's hard to express what's happening in the film. They're in these they're in There's a couple of different races. One of them starts out in a desert, and then um there's like a whole sort of like love story that goes along with that. And then there's another race that ends up being l- sort of less well handled, because it almost feels like, well, okay, now you're moving into territory that we haven't I didn't really even discuss before. I don't like that at all. um I don't know, there's all of these like odd features to this movie which make it feel like it rambles and isn't cohesive like the actual Death Race movies, where you're just following basically one race and the stakes are really high, and then there's like some little pieces that veer off from it, but it's always all very tightly centered on the race. Yeah, I don't really like this movie at all. But I offer it to my list because the Death Race franchise in most of the other Death Race movies really hold up. They're really good, and if you watch them sequentially, except for this one, they all really tell a story of why or what we consider dystopian in each individual era that they are told. And I do kind of like that, because we change our ideas of what dystopian and what dysfunction in society sort of looks like. So what's the most important thing? What, why are these things even in there? What are we thinking of in terms of morality? And it just actually kind of works. The last Death Race was not great either, but it was, I think, still a good continuation of the Death Race franchise. I mean, it it didn't stick the landing very well, but it did do a good job of trying to tell the story. So I submit as my number 7 Death Race 3 Inferno as my choice.
That is a choice.
It is a choice. I wish I could have talked about um Death Race with um uh who am I thinking? Now see, this is part of the problem of getting old, right? You also
Jim Brewer.
keep thinking of something and then you forget what it was that you were thinking. No, the one that was done uh by Paul Anderson. Um Death Race 2000. Death Race 2000. Death Race 2000, I think, gets everything right. It's a I think it is, and it stars Jason Statham. It is, and Ian McShane is in it. Death Race 2000. I mean, I'm sorry, Death Race, the movie that came out in 2008, is, I think, the kind of the perfect Death Race. It has everything that Death Race is supposed to have in it, but it also makes it about the race. It's not so much about all the other stuff that's happening, although that is important. It's all important as part of the dystopian society, not taking you on trips all over the world so that you can see how this is like. That doesn't work. It has to be that you keep the action and the story tight on just the race. And Death Race from 2008 does that. So that would have been my choice, but that's only the second film in the franchise. So
True.
had to choose Death Race 3.
Which is weird because it says 3.
Right? That's also always super bizarre. But, whatever. It works. Oh, David Carradine is also in the one that is as for Frankenstein, is also in the Death Race, the 2008 movie, because he's the one who originally was Frankenstein in 1975. So,
Mm-hmm.
kind of works. Kind of
It's
works. It
a
was
movie
fun.
that we've talked about before because it is a great movie.
It is, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's my number 7 choice.
My number 6 choice is some of you are gonna like it, some of you are not gonna like it. Whether it is because of um, you know what, doesn't matter, not the time or the place. But
I feel like you're calling me out already. Are you calling me out
oh
already?
yeah, totally calling you out.
When he says that, it usually means, Jen, I know you're not going to like this, but here we go anyway.
I
All
am
right.
I'm talking about Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Now, I'm gonna try and keep this short because, well, quite frankly, who needs the analysis of yet another Harry Potter movie? Basically, what boils down to me is when it comes to the franchise. After we get past the Christopher Columbus era, and it was good. It's a weird way of putting it, because Chris Columbus knows how to make a good family movie. He's amazing at it. But much like the stories from the books, things take a bit of a darker tone after the first couple of flicks, and Goblet of Fire is no exception. It has a great cast with the usual suspects: Daniel Radcliffe, uh, Rupert Grant, Emma Watson, Robbie Coltrane. You know the crew, but we also get uh, Alan Rickman. Don't want to forget Alan Rickman. Um, but we also get Gary Oldman and Brendan Gleeson to kind of pop in and do their thing for this film. And it also has one of the more tragic endings for what's supposed to be a kid story. Just the fact that they weren't afraid to do what they had to do to make people leave the theater going, what? They went there, and people, there were it was, I think, the first movie where it felt like there were true uh, consequences, and there was some weight to it. And I think it's also the first movie where the central cast, the main trio, leave being an area of being kid actors, right? They get to really stretch their legs with some emotion in this movie that even prior, um, they didn't really get to go, exploring a lot of grief and depression, and not just the basic emotions of happy and sad, or surprised or scared. It was a lot more layered, I think, starting with Goblet of Fire. It's the one movie that I saw Robert Pattinson in before the Batman. So I had everyone talking about the Batman and sparkly whatever. It's like, no, I only know him from this one thing. So not sure how that's relevant to why it's my number six, but the fact remains, I have nothing bad to say about the people um, that performed in this film, and they all did spectacular. And I think having such true hands on set, some tremendous talent along with these young people, really pushed them. It really pushed them to, I don't want to say up their game, but they were definitely spending time under the learning tree with all of these amazing actors on set, and that's why uh, Goblet of Fire is my number six, because after this, everybody's just better off for it.
I yeah, okay. That's a thing. I I have to say that I was one of those moms who whatever their kids were reading, I read. I didn't always like everything that they read. I mean, I suffered through some pretty crazy young adult fiction. And Harry Potter was I wouldn't say that I was like super enthused by it, but I was also it was fun. That was a fun series. And so as the movies came out, we most of my kids had already all read the books, and we mostly did comparisons between what they left out of the movies and what they put in, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I can see why this would be a maybe a interesting choice. I mean, yeah, yeah, I can't really say too much about it. I think that Harry Potter has been tainted by sort of quasi recent events, and the standalone IP is beloved by so many people that it's hard not to feel some sense of, hey, this belongs to a lot of fans now. Kind of in the same way that Tolkien, who is long since gone, his works are living on and on and on through his fans. And so, you kind of can't be mad at that. Um, and I didn't particularly love The Goblet of Fire, but okay, it was all right. So, okay, my number six. My number six is I don't know if anybody has ever even seen this, but I'm just gonna throw it out there because I absolutely love Peter Sellers and Christopher Plummer. And the two of them together make up the best team in comedy ever. I can't think. I mean, I guess I know there's others that are better than them, but in terms of there being a franchise that work together, this is just so awesome. Um, this is the Return of the Pink Panther. Now, the Pink Panther is basically a story about an inspector, Inspector Clouseau. And Inspector Clouseau is kind of a bumbling, yeah, he just sort of like stumbles into things, but it works and he gets the job done. I feel like Clouseau is sort of like a um underneath it all, you know that he is actually thinking things that he's not saying on screen. And that just adds to this idea that he just kind of like gets through everything without necessarily always putting the pieces together in sequential order. He gets the job done. And honestly, I feel like this character, the Inspector Clouseau character, is is mimicked a lot in sort of successive stories as we go down through different ideas of sort of mocking a little bit the whole idea of the police inspector. um, but the Return of the Pink Panther, um, I I really love this particular movie. So it sort of works because this was definitely on my franchise list, but the fourth one of this movie really does work as being pretty excellent. There is a lot of what I guess the best way to describe it is slapstick comedy in this, but it's never out of place. It's not like the comedy is there to break up the rest of the film or to act as some kind of relief because we've had, a period of high drama or anything. The slapstick is absolutely the integral lifeblood of the film. And that's rare. We don't get that very often. It doesn't always work. And just as a matter of filmmaking, story to film principle, I can't imagine how hard this was to kind of put together. It must have been difficult. And then when you see these two on screen, basically like creating this world whereby they're constantly at odds and yet they do the best work together, it's insanely good. Um, Peter Sellers had a I don't. I guess this is like the most iconic thing that I can think of for Peter Sellers, just in with my memory. I know he's also famous for a lot of other things, um, but the combination of Peter Sellers and Blake Edwards, who is the person who directed the Pink Panther, um, d- work so seamlessly. They had some kind of shorthand for each other because you can really feel it on screen. I absolutely just revel in this particular movie. The Pink Panther is in some of them the Pink Panther is a diamond. It is the diamond called the Pink Panther. Um, and then in successive movies, it's called the Pink Panther, and different things sort of happen. Um, the Return of the Pink Panther deals with sort of Clouseau in a way that he was made before, so it kind of harkens back to the original version of things. I really I feel like this is an actual good movie, as opposed to some of the others, which, yeah, maybe they're not the greatest. um but this particular one really does work. I will also say that one of the things that kind of works with this is, in remember that in, decades past, we didn't have the same amount of technology in things. I mean, that goes without saying, but there was still the idea that you see it now feels a little sometimes provincial because the I guess because the the levels to which they're willing to go to protect certain things or create layers of security are they almost make you laugh now. They almost make you think, "Oh my gosh, is that what they were doing back then? Like, this is sort of funny." And I kind of love that because it gives us a glimpse into what the history of, what we considered to be top level security was before, but it also gives Clouseau this chance to kind of shine because there aren't so many kind of impediments to him doing the things that he does in this film. It's a little bit tricky to explain without giving everything away, but if you have a chance to see this movie, I highly suggest it. It is really fun. So I think it's one of the more fun movies in the franchise, and Peter Sellers is just at his best. Clouseau plus Cato, which is his trusty companion, or not so trusty companion, just are a tour de force. I just really enjoyed this movie. So I am going to enter the Pink Panther, Return of the Pink Panther, as my number 6 choice.
Excellent choice.
Have you seen that movie?
Yes, I'm a big fan of the Pink Panther. Even the Steve Martin Pink Panthers. Just
So just as a quick trivia, this movie cost $5 million to make, which by today's standard is like almost a micro budget movie, right?
Hmm.
Um, and it pulled in a paltry $75 million, but that is still an incredible return on a movie. I mean, that is, I think, an epic return on a movie,
It
because when you
is.
consider today, people putting $125 million into a movie and only making $175 million. I mean, maybe that seems, oh yeah, but at least they made that much more. Yeah, but it's not the same return when you think I put 5 million into something and I got 75 million back. And
The
also,
multiplier is completely different.
Henry Mancini's theme song for the Pink Panther is so epic. It's just awesome. I love it.
All
And it's
right.
all
Well,
sprinkled around. Yeah, anyway, I could go on and on and on, but we need to give Josh a chance to get to his number 5.
my number 5. I knew exactly what I was going to do as soon as uh, I decided it was going to be number 5, or at least I decided what the number 5 was going to be. I'll put it like that. So give me a second. I'm just gonna. Sometimes you gotta wonder why you become a cop. I don't know how I become a cop. I just want to do something with my life. You just gotta do it. Hi, I'm talking about Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol, the COP. Oh, Jen, this was on your list earlier.
It definitely was.
It was your number 10. It breaks my top 5. Why? Because this is possibly my favorite Police Academy movie, not least of all because of Bobcat Goldthwait and just the idea of him joining the police force. It's the entire movie is just wonderful antics from top to bottom. It's everything that I'm put it to you this way: it is the Police Academy franchise in its like full stride, where the ground was being broken with the first couple of movies. The third one, eh, but Police Academy 4 bringing in the fresh faces to kind of liven up the the crew, if you will. It it did something, for better or worse. This fourth movie reinvigorated the franchise again, for better or worse. But I think this was the last great Police Academy movie that had all of the familiar hallmarks of what Police Academy was. I always thought, you know what? It's not a bad time to revisit this franchise, but do it in a way that is. I'm a big fan of continuing stories rather than restarting them. Uh, as to say, I prefer the the long awaited sequel over the reboot, and that goes for most things. So if we were to go that route of bringing it back, I would say let's just pick it directly off after Police Academy 4. Everything else, it doesn't actually have to exist. Superman kind of did that with Superman Returns. They're like 3 and 4, it's not really a thing. And Superman Returns take place after Superman 2. How does that sound to you? And it turns out Superman after Superman 2 became Stalker. But we're not here to talk about Superman. We're here to talk about Police Academy. Police Academy 4. Again, it's Police Academy in its full stride, hitting all of the comedy where they know it works because they already had 3 attempts to get it right. And in 4, they absolutely nail it for everything that it needs to be. And no, it doesn't have the novelty of the original Police Academy, but I'd say by the time the fourth one rolled around, they knew exactly where all the jokes had to be. They knew where the cast had to be, and they absolutely nailed the execution. Police Academy 4 is my number 5.
Good choice. For obvious reasons. I definitely like that movie too. Very much so.
But were my reasons for liking it good?
Yeah, and actually a little bit different from mine because I feel like this is the nostalgia fun movie to watch, and yeah, I didn't mind some of the other movies. They were okay. I love the fact that the other movies sort of give us a chance to get into the characters that we get presented with some new ones in Citizens on Patrol. So
I miss Gutenberg.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Although Gutenberg will always be Short Circuit to me. That will always be sort of my iconic. Who do I love you for? Yep, Short Circuit.
More than a woman.
I've no idea why I love that movie so much. Although my
Because
love
it's great.
for The Shape of Water might give you some. I don't know. Anyway,
Whatever
I have this.
God wants, he
I,
keeps.
I, I have this thing for. Never mind. We won't even go into that. Okay, moving right along.
Hold on before we go on. Just so we're clear, I don't want to get called up for this later because I love Short Circuit. Yes, now in the 21st century, as we have 40 years to think about what we've done. Yes, Fisher Stevens might be a bit problematic in the role that he was playing,
Little,
might just a
little.
tad bit. So just putting that out there. Um, yeah,
Still
and
holds up as a movie.
it does. It does.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You were saying
No, I was just gonna go into my number five,
number
which
5,
uh, okay. So I
Johnny
boy,
5.
yeah, Johnny Five. There you go. Um, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do this through the magic of trilogy time rearranging. Because technically, Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope is supposed to be the fourth in the franchise, even though the first three came far after this particular movie was released. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope is my number 5 choice. Now, like I said, obviously, this movie was released far before the actual real counting sequentially from movie release um episodes, but I can't think of a better franchise, even if we had to make the fourth film our actual number 4. I would still take that. I would still say that that is just pretty excellent as well. In fact, most of the Star Wars entries into the Star Wars universe are pretty amazing. I can't think of too many that make me unhappy. I mean, some of them don't quite stand up as the other ones do, but none of them are like, oh my God, I'm never watching that particular Star Wars because I just hate it so much. No, that is definitely not me. Um, I think okay. So if we're talking about Star Wars: A New Hope, obviously this was groundbreaking. Um, Groundbreaking in a way that made me extremely happy at a time when I didn't understand why it made me extremely happy. Um, so I'm going to attack this in two different ways. I'm going to say that if we are talking about the number 4 film as The Phantom Menace, which was released in 1999, I'll talk a tiny bit about that. But I'm going to say that A New Hope is from the original trilogy as the number 4 movie in the actual trilogy arrangement. This movie at the time that it was released, which was in 1977, um, I I want to say that so first of all, I didn't see this in the theaters. I was too young to see it in the theaters. Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. I saw it at a drive-in many years later. In fact, I think I saw it at the drive-in as a double feature with The Empire Strikes Back as being like, okay, this is the feature film, and then a lot of times drive-ins had like a first film and then the feature film, which was the next one, and that shows you how old I am again. But The Empire Strikes Back was supposed to be the feature film, and I was way more enthralled with A New Hope. It was so incredibly like it had this kind of discordant call to me, and I realized many years later that the story that is A New Hope is set almost completely in sync with what's called the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and it was very much done on purpose. George Lucas was an absolute fan, just like I am, of Joseph Campbell's work and really kind of took it to heart. Not only that, but it's, much like The Mandalorian, it is like a space cowboy film. And it just absolutely feels that way. Like it's swashbuckling. It's got all of these sort of iconic moments. There's a over the top bad guy. There's all of the world is in danger, the town is in danger. There's something that happens which always touches on, unrequited but just definitely looming love out there. All of those elements are all put together, and I really did love every single aspect of this movie. If I mean, I feel like you'd have to be, maybe 9 years old if you haven't seen Star Wars: A New Hope, or not at all a fan of Star Wars if you haven't seen it. But I will say that by the end of Star Wars, the setup for what happens in all the subsequent films is one of the best sort of ending segues that I can think of to move into all the rest of the films. I just absolutely loved it. If we are actually talking about episode one, The Phantom Menace, I know a lot of people don't like this film, and I don't particularly understand why they hate it so much. And I don't really want to get into, why fans didn't like Qui-Gon or, whatever. I actually don't care. And I say that with a lot of love in my heart, and I mean it. I don't care because as a part of the Star Wars universe, the Phantom Menace plays an incredible role of being not just the introduction to Anakin Skywalker, but also the Sith Lords and things that we now sort of just take for granted because we know the lore so well. But we didn't know any of this stuff until we were introduced to it in The Phantom Menace. And again, I know people don't like this movie as much as some of the other ones. They feel like it's got problematic pieces, or, parts of the story were just picked up and then dropped completely and whatever. Honestly, I don't know if you can have a franchise that sort of doesn't do that after it's undergone so much time in between and had as many revisions as this particular screenplay had. It's it gives us the foundations for so much of the rest of the Star Wars universe. So whether you choose Star Wars: A New Hope, or whether you choose The Phantom Menace as being the fourth entry into the number four franchise, my number five pick is definitely Star Wars, and you can pick or choose whichever one you like. They both stand up, I think, equally well, but for very different reasons. So there you go. Number five, Star Wars.
Well, for the sake of the Letterboxd list, if you follow 1021 Pod on Letterboxd, it will be known as Jen's Wacky List of Chaos.
Thank you. Yes.
It. I went with Star Wars 77.
Okay.
Because
I'm happy with that choice.
At least it very clearly says Episode 4 in subsequent releases,
and that does matter actually in a list of four in the franchise. So I do feel like that's a good choice.
Now I will say, even though Star Wars, especially New Hope, which didn't get a subtitle until subsequent releases, is very much worthy of this and most other lists. I didn't add it mainly because I couldn't wrap my head around which one was the fourth one.
See, that's why I had to go with the wacky choice of, okay, whether you choose A New Hope or Phantom Menace, yeah, okay, they're both good.
So yeah. It's, what can I say? It's definitely an excellent choice.
Thank you. I will never not be a Star Wars fan. I will watch everything that comes out via Star Wars branding, even if somebody says, "Oh my god, that is absolutely a dumpster fire." I don't care. I will watch it because that's how big of a fan I am.
Well, my number 4, appropriately, maybe the fours. Our number 4 slot should be the number 1 slot for this week.
Yeah. Oh, hey, that is no. Don't be doing a gen on me. That's my job.
Fair enough. I'll stay in my lane. My number 4 is the most America number 4 you can America, because it is literally a 1980s movie about uh, a literal fight between the U.S. and Russia.
Oh, and it's number 4. Ooh.
Yeah, I'm talking Rocky 4.
Oh gosh. Okay. Yep.
Now, I am unapologetically a huge fan of this movie. Now, mind you, you'll notice that sometimes I have a bit weird tastes. Like, I love Die Hard too. Might even like it more than the original Die Hard. Why? Because those were the movies that my dad bought on VHS and the ones that I would watch on repeat. Did he have Rocky on VHS? No, it cost too much. Rocky 4? That's where it's at. So, Rocky 4, Rocky Balboa versus Ivan Drago, the 6'5" Soviet athlete. What happens? Well, he kills Rocky's sort of mentor slash family figure, Apollo Creed, in the ring.
No, not Apollo, not Lando.
Yeah, he did.
Sorry, I can never see Apollo as anything other than Lando Calrissian now, but yeah.
And of course, Rocky not only wants the match, he doesn't just want the boxing match, he wants revenge. But this movie is filled with all sorts of great stuff. Even, if you don't know who Dolph Lundgren is, you know who Dolph Lundgren is. That's how sort of iconic the role was for him. You get things like, if he dies, he dies. You get Rocky training out in the woods, doing the classic, I'm going to train with slabs of meat and, running in the snow, where, as as the montage shows, Drago's in the state-of-the-art facility, getting all sorts of roided up, and the numbers on the thing go higher, so that must mean he's stronger. And it culminates in just a fantastic bout between the two. And honestly, at the end of this movie, as you see, not only is Rocky, sporting Apollo's trunks, but he's being draped in the American flag. And you just get this feeling of patriotism and American pride. Oh, it's so America. Give me a beer, not a...
And an AK-47.
Yeah. No, that's a Russian gun.
Okay, sorry.
No, you can't. No, you can't do that.
Can't be mixing the metaphors. Yeah, I get it.
Anything at a domestic. That's the kind of beer I need. And trucker hats. And John Deere, I want to say.
I think that's valid. That sounds valid.
So, for the sake of patriotism alone, it doesn't get much of a higher mark than Rocky Four, but it also, to see that they found they find another reason for Rocky to fight other than, but I want to fight. This is what I do. I just want to fight, and and to have that bit of revenge. You some movies kind of put revenge in places that it doesn't need to be. Jaws comes to mind, but Rocky Four, a franchise that could have easily ended, after two. Heck, if we're being completely honest with each other here, it could have been even more amazing if it ended after the first one. If it just wasn't a franchise at all, we would have that monumental boxing movie. It would be the boxing movie of all boxing movies if it just ended. But I am so happy that it not only made it to two and three, and then four, then five, then six, then 28. I think we're on now. I what a, what a, I put Creed in this lineage because it is a part of the series. Um, Rocky Four, I love it, love it. Again, unapologetically, it is my number four. Rocky Four.
Okay, so there were 3 Creed movies and 6 Rocky movies. So 10 Rocky movies altogether, because Creed, I think, absolutely counts as
Mm-hmm.
part of the Rocky universe. So, and in fact, Creed 3 came out in March of this year.
So this thing has been going on for 40 years.
It's been a long time, a very
Still
long
waiting
time.
on Rocky's next fight.
Uh, that might be a crossover with Rocky and Final Destination as he kind of battles death, right? Oh boy. Okay, I'll tell you my Sylvester Stallone crossover story sometime, but not today. Today we are going to move right along to George A. Romero's Land of the Dead. This is my number 4 choice, and quite honestly, Land of the Dead by George A. Romero, as you might know him from Dawn of the Dead, Land of the Dead. Um, this particular movie is okay. I'm going to sort of uh, pivot slightly because originally in this spot at the very beginning of this show was Highlander, but because Highlander 4 is a movie called Endgame, uh, I decided I can't do it. I can't find I can't do it. I love the Highlander franchise, but Endgame was I don't know, it upended everything that I love about Highlander. So I chose to move it out for a movie that I also feel like works as epically but has a great number 4 entry. And so I'm going to explain what this is all about. So George Romero's Land of the Dead, for anybody who hasn't seen it, is it's more of a social commentary than even the other Dawn of the Dead, Land of the Dead movies have been. And that says a lot because most of his movies are direct metaphors for, they're direct metaphors. I'll just say that. I mean, if you haven't seen any of George Romero's zombie movies, run, don't walk to go watch them. They are infinitely worth watching. Even the originals, as old as they are absolutely on point and just well done storytelling. Land of the Dead departs a little bit from I think, the original inception of the zombie movie, where it starts to give the zombies slightly more sentience. And maybe that sentient was always there, sort of percolating or just undiscovered, but we get whole classes of people and strata of protection, and even the zombies themselves. themselves, excuse me, realize that there is something amiss. And it oddly, I didn't think it was going to work, but oddly, it does work. Um, Land of the Dead is a really well told story, and it's also kind of terrifying on a number of different levels, other than just, zombies eat flesh. Um, it's terrifying to sort of look in the mirror of the way that we have organized our own society and what that means for our survival going forward, where we prioritize the rich, where we give a kind of deference to protection of people who maybe don't even deserve that kind of protection. We're not basing it on morality, we're just basing it on the almighty dollar. And it really kind of struck a chord, I think. It's not quite the uh shocking feeling that you get from some of the other um Land of the Dead epics, but as a post-apocalyptic story, it works really well in outlining a kind of strata that begins to emerge. And it makes sense in the evolution of this storytelling that this is where you would end up. um I like this. I like it a lot. I feel like this is sort of the culmination of George Romero's idea of what the zombie world is supposed to look like. And it turns zombies from just being mindless flesh grabbing people to being a lot more aware, if you will, of what's happening. It's not, it's not like there's a huge, they're not all of a sudden just like, reading Encyclopedia Britannica or surfing the internet looking for new ways to thwart security or something. But there is this awareness which feels like the proper evolution for this particular franchise to go in, for this storytelling to become more than what it was. And that to me feels like, yeah, this is exactly what it's supposed to be. Rather than just retelling the same story over and over and over again, looking at you, Walking Dead, you get something which feels like it's got real potential. I really liked it. I love George Romero's storytelling. I loved this movie for its very dark and atmospheric, scary nature. Everything feels like, stakes are very high. I love the bad guys. They are very over the top, but they feel like, this is big fat rich people doing big fat rich people things. And yeah, that actually made me feel really good. In a strange way, this movie mirrors, or it doesn't mirror, but became, I think, a mirror for some of the Purge movies, where, you have this idea that in the end, look, we're all equal. Dead or alive, we're basically just human. The existence of being human isn't, it doesn't care whether you're alive or dead. There is something about being alive and making good choices which matters to the quote unquote dead, meaning that, what you do in life matters for the afterlife. It's just a crazy, really good mix of ideas, excellent atmospheric and cinematic choices, great color palettes, and really thoughtful, even though some of them, like I said, are, super caricature, really thoughtful, good ideas for characters that make sense to the movie. So, uh I am going to choose Land of the Dead by George Romero as the my number four choice for my movies of number four.
Okay, I gotta say I'm surprised that it took this long to get to the horror franchises.
I was actually kind of surprised too, but my top four are all horror all the time. So at least you'll have that to look forward to.
And I certainly will, especially with so many to choose from. I have no idea what your top
I know that
three
was
could be.
hard. That was actually hard, but I gotta say that some of the horror movie franchises, the number four movies, uh, precede 3D movies because everybody was doing 3Ds for the number three movies,
Mhm.
and they're really genuinely awful. I mean, they're just awful. So the franchise lived on and went on to do good stuff. Looking at you, Halloween. Looking at you, Friday the 13th, and they did really good stuff after, but that period of after 3D was just so terrible. And some of that is just like rights and writers changing hands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I tried to curate the best for the top of my list.
Some might say I did the same. Others will say I totally did not.
Well, we'll see about that. Give us your number three.
My number three. I know what some of you were thinking. We're kind of like Jen. What took so long to get to
Yeah,
where
where's your
we
Kevin
know
Smith
you?
movie?
What he hasn't made a fourth one of anything yet.
Oh, that's just so sad. I'm so sorry.
Otherwise, it would have been on here
I'm
because
sorry.
we agreed. It's got to be the same same thing, not just a bunch of movies that are connected. Otherwise, Kevin Smith would be ruling this list. Anyway, here we go. My number three. Sorry, I was trying to get a little more comfortable. My number three took me a while to get to this one, but we're here, and you're gonna get it. Oh, you're gonna get it. It's a superhero movie. I know, right? It's like, what? It took this long for Josh to get to a superhero movie? You would think your list would be full of superhero movies. Well, one of the problems is superhero movies, they tend to tie up in trilogies, you know? And every once in a while you get one across that fourth film barrier. Superman hit number four. Let's see. Thor hit number
X-Men.
four. X-Men, yeah, hit number four. And Captain America's going to hit number four soon. Batman, I guess if you're one of those people that associates the Schumacher movies with the Burton movies, because technically I guess they're same universe. Who really knows anymore?
I don't know. Let's ask James Gunn to come on the show.
Yes, make lists with us.
Let's see. Let's see. Let's get his opinion.
It's like James Gunn, you brought back the Keaton Batman. So are we just ignoring the Clooney and Kilmer Batman? They don't exist, or how does that work, buddy?
So many questions.
But my number three movie is one that I haven't named yet, but it does have one of the characters I named. I'm talking about Avengers Endgame, because it is the fourth Avengers movie. It is the fourth Avengers movie. I'm not really sure how I can restate the significance of that. It is the fourth Avengers movie. Now, mind you, the Avengers franchise by itself is not a set of movies about anything other than people from other movies coming together. That's the Avengers. It takes the heroes from all of these, sort of different franchises. Yes, they're all MCU. Yes, they're all related, but let's face it, Iron Man, Captain America, they all run their own separate storylines until it's time to not do that anymore. And that's when they come together for the Avengers. Now, what makes Endgame so different, other than it's admittedly a bit of a cop out since it originally was going to be one sort of long Infinity War deal that got broken up into two pieces, and then instead of Infinity War Part 2, it changed it to Endgame. But that's a whole other ball of wax. So Endgame, what makes this special? What makes us worthy of number three is, like I said, it takes all of these heroes from the MCU, from Marvel, and has them team up for the fourth time to take on Thanos again. In Infinity War, you had that battle with Thanos where you should have aimed for the head, and things kind of took a sour turn for our heroes. But in Endgame, it all comes sort of full circle as Tony learns how to take one for the team, and Doctor Strange maybe saw a couple of ways where everybody could survive, but as the meme goes, he really hates Tony. So, that's the one that he kind of pushed into existence. Fan theories aside, Endgame was the culmination of so many movies, so many phases, so many people's efforts to really make a climax to this story, to where in Infinity War it was the Avengers versus Thanos, but in Endgame it was everybody, bringing in everybody, not just a handful of heroes to save the earth, but armies. We saw armies fighting each other in a superhero movie. And I know you're the Tolkien fan, Jen. So me being the MCU guy, I can only equate it to maybe what you saw as you saw the armies battle it out in Lord of the Rings. Seeing, my favorite heroes that I'd been reading about and watching, in cartoons, brought to life in such a magnanimous way. Seeing the live action war play out was absolutely breathtaking, and to have the emotion feel so genuine after Tony makes the ultimate sacrifice, and not to discount Black Widow and whatever, but I'm also a sucker for a time travel movie. I'm going to put that on Front Street. So seeing them kind of do the Back to the Future thing and revisit, previous installments of the franchise. It's a movie, and this could be a controversial opinion, that made Thor Dark World better because you're kind of getting a different perspective of what was going on around that time. You're getting Banner, it's like, remember, you're mindless Hulk now, so you blend in. And he's like, right, smash, grr. And of course, who can forget Steve Rogers checking out his own keister? Avengers Endgame really, it was the culmination of a lot of great work. Some people will say that it also began the downfall of the greatness that Marvel was. Personally, I do think it was a plateau, but after that, quite frankly, it's hard to keep peaking. After that, you're definitely going to go down. But I also don't believe that it's an uncontrollable nosedive. I think right now their decline is very much controlled, but maybe not as much as they wished it was. I think they have control of their decline. like I said, I just it just might be just a tad bit out of hand. But like I said, Avengers Endgame is my number three, and it is definitely peak Marvel.
Well, I hmm. So I love Marvel. I do. But individually, certain movies definitely are more entertaining than other movies, I think is maybe the best way to say it. And I very much see Endgame as also a culmination of several standalone movies that had to happen to contribute to Endgame. I mean, Avengers Endgame couldn't have happened without having Black Panther. And I get really fatigued after a while, not because I don't love the source material, because I do, and because there's still so much richness in the storytelling that goes into um, almost every single Marvel piece. But one of the things that I start getting fatigued with is the amount of understanding that the audience has to carry with them in order to make sense of the universe at large, because we've had so many disruptions to timelines, to um, events within certain character timelines, and then we add in Doctor Strange, and now just with Loki's fragmented multiverses. It gets, I think I can understand why people get very overwhelmed by Marvel, which doesn't mean that, if you're a Marvel fan, you're not going to love Endgame, because obviously you really are. But I think that now going forward, people really are sort of looking for, okay, you can continue this, but can we take a big, deep breath and maybe have something a little bit different so that we can sort of pause, and I feel like the Disney serials are a really good way of handling that. Scarlet Witch is amazing. Loki was absolutely phenomenal. Um, Even Hawkeye was really good, better than I imagined than it was going to be. And I feel like that is sort of because you can insert a lot of levity there, you can insert some deeper character storytelling there, you can really expand the universe. She-Hulk was also, I don't care what anybody says, I loved it. Um even even Miss Marvel was amazing. All of these things together give us a collective ability to pause while still allowing for the film franchise to kind of, okay, recapture some of the magic, take, like I said, take a deep breath and then move on, because I feel like there's still a lot of really good stuff left to be told in the Marvel universe. So I think that good choice. Avengers was a really good choice. Very good
Thank
choice.
you.
Okay. My number three, moving into my horror genre top, rounding out my top four, is a movie that everybody is probably familiar with. Although you may not have seen it, you have probably seen references to it. There's a ton of memes for it and all kinds of good stuff. It's one of the weirdest of this franchise, but also I think one of the best because it also launched the series. So I am talking about Chucky. The fourth film in the franchise is called The Bride of Chucky or Bride of Chucky. Um, and it stars Chucky himself, and also Chucky's paramour from before, Tiffany Valentine. Tiffany basically goes and what any old lover should do, gets his body, which is now in the shape of a doll, from the evidence locker at a police place by bribing the policeman and then killing him, of course, because that's what you do. And she conducts a voodoo ceremony, which basically goes awry. Doesn't quite work. And Chucky is back, but uh some crazy stuff sort of happens. And when I say crazy stuff, I mean, like, a lot of people really dislike this movie because it's oddly highly sexualized, and at the same time it's dolls, so it becomes really super weird. But I love it. I love this movie for the ridiculousness of it, because it returns Chucky to its true, well, I think, where it was supposed to be, and then it got too serious, sort of, playful camp. It's supposed to be ridiculous. It's not supposed to be serious. You're not supposed to feel like, oh my god, the world is going to end because there's a voodoo doll on the loose, or why don't you just kick it and it will die, or no, nothing like that. This movie returns it to its sort of like, okay, I'm not going to take this so seriously that we can't have fun with it. And it's really, I would call this black comedy. It's not dark comedy, it's black comedy, because it involves a lot of, obviously there's rituals in it. There's also death and dismemberment. There's a lot of weird sex in it. There's crazy things that, maybe you might not want to watch like with your kids, but at the same time, it is really excellent horror storytelling. Um, and I will say that Don Mancini, who wrote this version, this Chucky, well, I mean, Don Mancini wrote Child's Play altogether, but this in this episodic piece of Chucky, he takes it to sort of like the most extreme, while giving us a brand new world to explore, and that is the world with Tiffany, because Tiffany goes on to become very integral in the Chucky universe. And again, this is sort of the launch of the series that is now playing on Sci-Fi, which is the Chucky series, and it's excellent. I mean, it really, I think, makes the whole horror comedy feel dark, horror comedy, not light horror comedy. It makes it feel like it is okay. It is okay to look at things and laugh even when they are absolutely terrible and horrible. And the reason that we need that sometimes is to put things into proper perspective. Horror is never just about being the most graphic or the most horrible. And I mean, my next choice is kind of going to go in that direction almost. Horror is oftentimes about pushing the boundaries between what we understand and how we are really seeing the world. That is, there's always sort of a disconnect. A lot of horror movies deal with uh, uh, mental illness. And it's the horror movies are not saying that mental illness should be treated lightly, or that, you shouldn't be paying attention to this. Actually, the horror movie is trying to say, hey, here's the metaphor for what it's like if you have schizophrenia. Here's the metaphor for what dark depression feels like. And it brings it out in these visual forms. Chucky, and specifically The Bride of Chucky, sort of deals with some of these issues, like, being a jilted lover, understanding what it means to want to do something that is larger than life when you feel like you are the smallest on the planet. Um, and a lot of other things as well. There's so much to this movie that is like good, I think, and proper franchise storytelling, which not just extends the story of Chucky, but also gives us now a brand new world to work with. So after four, I want to say, well, I know there's the Seed of Chucky, which, wow, if you have not seen the Seed of Chucky and you are not, what's a good word for this, if you don't like what I just talked about, which is basically like the the dark comedy, the dark real commentary on society, don't watch The Seed of Chucky, because that one is super crazy. It's over the top crazy. But if you're watching these, after you see Bride of Chucky, you get to The Seed of Chucky, then you get to The Curse of Chucky, then you get to The Cult of Chucky. And then I believe the last one was kind of like a reboot of Child's Play, which was pretty terrible. But if you end at the Cult of Chucky and then you move into the series, you get a really amazing universe of good horror fiction storytelling. So, number 3 for me, Bride of Chucky. It's the number 4 film in the Child's Play series, and truly good stuff. Excellent stuff.
Fun fact: it's the only Child's Play movie I've seen.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I love Tiffany as a character. I just absolutely love Jennifer Tilly as both the actress, and then in the series, Jennifer Tilly plays Jennifer Tilly. And it's just so great. Like, it's just so awesome. It's the most meta of awesomeness that you could possibly get. So
Well, I dig it, and I'm glad I was able to say I've seen it.
awesome. So we're into the top 2.
Yes, top 2. My number 2. I gotta find it on this. There it is, so I can add it to the letterbox list to 2-1-pod, which you'll find under Josh's list of 4s. That's tonight's list title for me. My number 2. I had all sorts of jokes that I could have gone with, but I think I'm going to play it straight and let you know that, unironically, this is my favorite movie in the franchise. Why? I don't know. I already said that I'm a sucker for time travel. Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe there's something about 1980s San Francisco that really is endearing to me. Or maybe I just like whales.
You just like row your boat. I know.
I do. I'm talking about Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. It is, again, one of those movies that we had on VHS, and I just watched and watched and watched. Hearing Kirk explain what the future is like is mind-blowing. Money, we don't have money. Having a Spock that's more adolescent than Spock, as he's trying to sort of relearn everything after the events of Star Trek's 2 and 3. It's one of my favorite things in this world, is a good serialized story where you're seeing that, yeah, each one of these movies stands alone, right? But then you get to see what happens next. And then what happens next. This is the movie with no Enterprise. A Star Trek movie with no Enterprise. Can you imagine how someone pitched that? And the Enterprise blew up. What do we do? Well, they have that Klingon bird of prey that they stole from old Doc Brown. They can use that, right? Yeah, I guess so. So, yeah, all the mission gets done on a Klingon bird of prey. And they landed cloaked on Earth so they can get whales, so they can search the nuclear vessels, so Scotty can, wonder why, people are using hands to operate computers or a mouse. As I pick up my mouse and I go, hello, computer. And it's just not responding. And he's so confused.
This was in the days before Siri, by the way, so
Yeah.
just gotta throw that out there. There was no Hey Google.
It was a lot of fun vignettes for the Star Trek crew in the 80s. What did Kirk call them? Colorful metaphors or colorful? I don't remember. Because somebody was swearing and Spock's like, What does that mean? He's like, just like colorful language. It's like, hmm. And then he responds by saying the swearing back, and it's it's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. As Spock jumps into the whale tank to talk with. Uh, Star Trek for the Voyage Home is the most fun anybody could have in a Star Trek movie, and notably also, other than no Enterprise, no, there's really no villain. They're not up against anybody except maybe the clock. It's definitely not that it's a no pressure situation, because there's definitely a lot of pressure on them to get some whales to the future, to have something be able to respond to the whale song that the alien craft is basically destroying the Earth with. But as far as a nemesis, it it's just not here. And to me, considering every movie that does these kinds of things, science fiction, especially, having an adversary is usually the key. A memorable villain. Star Wars is full of them. So when Star Trek decides to kind of veer off course and just basically do a villainless movie, because I'm not going to call that craft, the villain. They just came back to talk to their buddies. Their buddies just weren't there. And once they found their buddies, the whales, they're like, okay, cool, peace out, and they left. So it's not like they were, angry. They weren't antagonistic. Um, they were looking, they were searching for something. And if you take any kind of lesson, any singular lesson from Star Trek 4, it's maybe the idea that you don't have to solve all of your problems by blasting things, and that was my takeaway, growing up. So there sometimes you just need to figure out what the problem is, solve it, and that can be that. Even in a movie, I kind of wish more franchises would sort of take a break from the high octane action every once in a while, and give us something different. Give us a different way to look at our favorite characters. Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, did it, and they did it very well, and that's why it's my number 2.
Well, obviously, I like that film too because it also made my list, although slightly further down because I had so much goodness to throw into the middle. Although, arguably, I probably could have traded Death Race 3 for Star Trek 4. But anyway, in retrospect, we'll just let that go. Okay, my number 2.
Let go.
My number 2. My number 2 is a film which I absolutely love, more so because the next movie in the franchise was released in theaters April 21st. And I am super excited. I hope I get to go see it in the theater. It is called Evil Dead. The Evil Dead original saga starts with The Evil Dead. And then you move into The Evil Dead 2, which honestly feels like maybe that should have been the first one. I don't know. And then we get Army of Darkness, which is just freaking hilarious, even though it is also kind of spooky and crazy. But it's just
the
fun.
King, baby.
It is so fun. I love that movie. I could watch that movie over and over and over again. But then we had to wait 20 years. 20 years for the next Evil Dead. And when it released on April 5th of 2013, they have a thing for these April release dates. It was spectacular. It is absolutely considered a part of the Evil Dead moving forward trilogy plus, and so it does make it the number four film, even though it takes Ash out of the picture a little bit. Ash makes a odd cameo at the very end of the movie, um, but The Evil Dead follows a girl named Mia, and honestly, um, I was I had a lot of trepidation around this particular um movie. I when I first went to go see it, I wasn't sure if I was going to like it because I'm so used to Bruce Campbell and his campy Evil Dead style, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to love this so much. I did really love it. It brings, I think, the entire franchise back to what made it so spooky in the beginning, so incredibly powerful, but it adds layers of real visceral body horror into the mix. So it took a little bit of camp out of the film, but it added in these layers of absolute danger, and rose stakes incredibly high. It really is an excellently and well put together film, excellently done and well put together film, and the journey that you watch this girl Mia go on really gives you, I think, further insight into what makes the Deadites, and how it happens, and what is called forth from the Necronomicon. It is truly a journey into madness. And I am so there for it. The other thing that I love about this particular movie is the simplicity, but the over accentuation of color use. Everything is basically oversaturated in all the right places. In all of the other places where the movie is just sort of mundane, the color palette is drab. It doesn't call attention to itself. When it needs to be over the top, you can feel that the color saturation begins to take on emergency red everywhere. And that just is, to me, that's a brilliant layer of storytelling when you can tell a story through color palettes. There's something so incredible about that I wish more filmmakers would use. So I 100%, if you know the story of the Evil Dead, you know the story of the Evil Dead. In this particular one, because Mia is trying to break a drug addiction, she becomes kind of the weakest link in everything, and that's what makes her open and vulnerable to then what happens to her in the woods, which is where we know that all of the original Evil Dead bad stuff began. Um, but by the end of the film, you also understand that there is something even darker and scarier out there than what we have experienced before. And I think that in this next film, Evil Dead Rise, we are about to experience, and I know a lot of people have said, well, it doesn't bring anything new to the Evil Dead universe, and maybe it doesn't. But honestly, there's enough people out there, just like with Star Wars, who feel this sense of strong nostalgia, who will always be fans and love the horror genre for what it is. I think that this movie is going to bring a lot of what made Evil Dead the fourth film in the installment. I think it's going to bring a lot of the things that happened in that film into sharper focus. So that feels like something that I can't wait for. I know it's going to be good. I know the record player, the phonograph that we were kind of shown in a past Evil Dead, is going to play a part in it because that's got the chant on it. And then also a further sort of summoning of the Deadites, which I just love that whole mythology. There's something great about it. So I'm really excited about it, but I'm even more excited, I think, about the idea that the Evil Dead as a number four film really sort of pushed the envelope for what could come after. And for that, it definitely deserves a spot way at the top. So Evil Dead gets my number two position as being a number four film in the Evil Dead franchise.
Kalatu Verata necktie?
Yeah, necktie. Don't say the words now. You don't know what you might summon I mean, oh wow, that was a really bad uh, dyslexic moment. Don't summon deadites over the open airwaves. You don't know who's listening.
Whoops. Well, I said
Yes,
the words.
sort of.
Sort of.
And yes, as long as your hand is not on the Necronomicon, you're probably fine.
Should I have not had my hand on the Necronomicon?
No, you really shouldn't. No. You shouldn't go there. That's kind of bad.
Huh.
This dovetails perfectly in with, and I know most people have probably seen this article, but there was an article a while ago that talked about the number of books in the Harvard Library that were actually, they found out, either had partially or been wholly bound in human skin. So, you think it's impossible, but then you read these articles about, yeah, no, actually, apparently that was just a thing at some point. And yeah.
Okay.
Makes the Evil
Okay.
Dead seem a little bit more realistic, doesn't it?
Well, I always thought it was a true story.
It is, especially Armies of Darkness. We know that actually happened in the Middle Ages. There's all
Mhm.
kinds of literature that, specifically references Hail to the King, baby.
Exactly.
Yep. So moving right along, I can't wait to
Yes.
hear what your number one movie is, Josh.
I can't wait to hear what it is too.
What's it gonna be?
Oh, yeah, that's what it is.
I
Okay.
have no idea what it is this time. I mean, my guess would have been something that was like related to Toy Story, but I
Oh,
feel
God.
like after your whole list, no, that's not going to work.
I wish I could say Toy Story 4 was worthy of the list, but
It definitely isn't. I agree.
Toy Story 3, heart-wrenching. Just, how dare you make me feel? Toy Story 4, not so much.
Yeah, I hear you.
But we're not here to talk about the stuff that's not on the list. We're talking about the stuff that is on the list. And my number one choice, quite the departure, I think, from my usual fare, mostly because Kevin Smith didn't make a fourth movie yet.
Crossing our fingers, Kevin Smith.
My fourth movie I picked because when it comes to film, by itself, as a standalone, as just a movie, it is amazing. So when it comes to fourth films, I don't see how anybody could compare to 2015's Mad Max Fury Road. It's one of those things you watch the first time and
wait. Before we go forward, I have to ask the question. So what? Tell us in order. What are the Mad Max trilogies?
Oh, it's Mad Max, Mad Max 2, Mad
There's
Max
Road
3,
Warrior.
with Road Warrior. So it's what Mad Max, Road Warrior, Thunderdome, and Fury Road.
Okay, just making sure I got them in order because I was getting a little confused. Okay, so Fury Road moves on from. Is it actually the fourth Mad Max movie, or is it a reboot of the Mad Max franchise?
It is the fourth Mad Max movie.
I honestly didn't know that, and I didn't read that from George Miller, so I was super confused about whether that was actually the fourth movie or not.
At the very least, for the sake of this list, it is the fourth movie.
Okay. Okay.
But watching this movie, it was one of the first times where I watched a movie that it almost seemed like the more dialogue there was, and it seemed less necessary. I walked out of this going, this would have worked just as well as an amazing piece of a film experience if there was no dialogue at all. Because between the physical performances of, uh, the likes of a Tom Hardy or Charlize, nobody asked you. Alexa's like all up in my business here. I don't know what they're doing. Anyway, between like the physical performances of the cast and just the way that it was shot, that it's hard to find, I think, a better example of show not tell when it comes to filmmaking. Everything is absolutely 100% shown uh, through performance and shooting. The blocking is incredible. The stunt coordination, everything about this movie is at this crazy unattainable level that I am hard pressed to find an equal. It is made on such a grand scale with so little cheating involved. I say cheating, I mean essentially practical effects, practical stunts, not relying on computers to do the heavy lifting. George Miller went out there and he made the movie with what was on set. And it was, I think, much the better for it. I know this all sounds like a big hodgepodge of words, but honestly, it's really less about me being tired and more about me being in absolute stunned amazement about Mad Max Fury Road. When they came out with it was a black and white version, it was like, that probably looks stunning too. Everything works. It's every department just absolutely crushes it. And this is one of those films where on Letterboxd, I give it a straight 5 stars. Not because of any type of, I know it's quirky, but I like it. No, this is from front to back all about everything you see on screen, plus the ability to enjoy it on such a varied range of levels. I don't know what else to say. It's Mad Max Fury Road is an achievement. And it's the 4th movie, according to my list. The 4th. And it's one of the reasons why you have to take a look at, not anybody can do lists about trilogies. Trilogies are what they are. Or the 3rd movie, because everybody talks about the 3rd movie. Nobody ever talks about the 4th movie. Not in the way that it really deserves, as far as its importance in a franchise. It's usually the linchpin on whether or not something is going to continue or not. Mad Max Fury Road is no exception, as we're going to get the spin-off film at some point. From what I understand, it's been in development for quite a while.
Next year, 2024.
So yeah, it's only 9 years, between films. But usually when you hear that that much time passes between such a great movie to the next one, some might have doubts about the ability to recapture the magic. I have no doubt that next year we're going to be gifted a really good movie. Um, but it's that extra time, I think, that would really help create a memorable cinematic experience. It's not being rushed, and I very much appreciate that. Hopefully, I'll be proven right in the future. Mad Max Fury Road, wonderful film, and it's well deserving of my number one spot.
So, if I would have thought about this a little bit further, and apparently I was not thinking about Mad Max as the franchise, with Mad Max being the fourth film in the franchise, because I really did believe that it was a reboot, I absolutely would have chosen that as my number one as well. So, there's that. Um, I Mad Max is, I think, one of the it's a testament to George Miller, who is, as of today, 78 years old. So I think he's 78. He is an absolute powerhouse of creative genius. And I mean, here's to many more years of him being able to do this. I love it. I hope that I feel like Mad Max Fury Road was the culmination of all of the Mad Max before Fury Road rolled up into one to create this kind of awesomeness. Like, this was the movie that George Miller wished he could have created with every single Mad Max that came before. But I gotta say, Road Warrior, no, I'm sorry. Well, yeah, Mad Max 2, I guess. Um, is to me also one of those perfect films. Everything matches. There is zero in it that feels superfluous. Every character has a very distinct place in the story, and nothing feels like it is wasted. It all feels perfectly seamless. And when you get to that happening twice in a director's slash writer's career, you know that it is design, not accident. And that is just, I mean, it's perfect. It's kind of like watching Wes Anderson work. It is absolutely a genius sort of piece that where everything comes together, and it takes such a broad knowledge of cinema, both from the directing side and the writing side. And even, I think, I mean, VFX are important, but even just being able to visualize what it is that you want and then being able to practically bring it to the screen is almost a lost art anymore, because we use so much VFX as, I hate to say it, but as a crutch for not using practical effects, because we're looking for a specific thing and you run out of ideas about how to bring that to the screen. George Miller is basically like never say die. Look, if I want it to be this, I will figure out a way to make this appear before my camera so that I can capture it on film, not do it in post editing. That to me is just absolutely astounding. So, yes, hats off to the Mad Max. I'm really excited to see Anna Taylor Joy bring Furiosa to the screen. I think it's going to be great. I love Anna Taylor Joy. She is one of the most dedicated, hardworking actresses in Hollywood that I can think of right now. She endures. I mean, she really endures, and it shows. What comes off of the screen absolutely is perfect. So she's a great person to be Furiosa. Okay, so my number one is, okay, probably everybody would have seen this coming. It's Alien. It's Alien 4, which is Alien Resurrection. And I've talked about this movie on this list before, on this podcast before. It's been part of my other list. Alien 4 has some of, I think, the best lines. And I don't know how you can argue with a cast that includes um, Ron Perlman, uh, Winona Ryder, obviously, Sigourney Weaver, the best of the best. And even as an odd crossover with my number three, The guy who voices Chucky is in this film playing one of the mercenaries. No, I'm sorry, not playing one of the mercenaries, playing one of the scientists. And it is such a good. This person also played Grima Wormtongue from, um, Re- well, both Two Towers and Return of the King. Um, it is, I think, one of the best alien movies in the franchise, not because it does anything new necessarily, but because it creates Sigourney Weaver's character Ripley. It gives her this kind of longevity that defies all logic and allows us to continue on with the franchise and her being attached to it in a way that I feel like was inventive and also honored the actual alien lore. Um, I really like this also because it didn't try to just get rid of Alien 3. And I feel like that would have been a smart choice because I really didn't like Alien 3 personally. But instead of just getting rid of everything, they just sort of quietly incorporated some aspect of it by saying, okay, well, here's where we got the genetic material. This is kind of what happened. And they sort of quietly dance over it, but what they get out of it is Ripley clones. And I love that. I absolutely love it. I also love the aspect of Alien 4, which is kind of like the culmination of Ripley's wanted desire for children. She had a child in we know that she had a child because Aliens 2 shows us that she had a kid. Um and her child died while she was in space because of her extended long hypersleeps. And when we get to Aliens and she gets, Newt becomes sort of like her adopted found family. By the time we get to Alien 3, Newt is dead in cryosleep. And it's heartbreaking. It's really sad. And then by the time we get to Alien 4, oh boy, now, well, Alien 3, she actually has the queen growing inside of her. That's crazy, which is another sort of version of the mother story. But then by the time we get to Alien 4, they used Ripley's DNA to create this secondary creature, which is supposed to be more sentient than the alien itself, but also, and I think the hope was, they were trying to quote unquote domesticate it for military purposes. But you get sort of a whole sad, tragic story, and yet at the same time, it feels like a full circle. I also love this film because it gives Ripley a chance to be as badass as she actually is. I mean, she isn't just a good person, like, she knows a lot. She is so unbridled in what she can do. She's been augmented by the cloning process. Her blood is now part acidic, and so there's that. She is incredibly strong, and she's also got this sort of intelligence about her, which is so powerful. It's just incredibly powerful. I really, really love this film on so many different levels. I also have to say that Winona Ryder's character as the android synthetic person character is the perfect augmentation to Ripley's very strong presence. It gives you the chance to sort of feel as if the there is something more happening with the synthetic life forms that is not just it's not just what we see with Wyland Corporation. It's something more. And I kind of like that. I wish they had taken that a little bit further, but I love that in this film that it gives us a chance to experience the synthetic life form differently than we have in the past. So I'm going to say I absolutely love this particular version of Alien. After this, we start getting the Alien versus Predator, and we get, the prequel series is with Prometheus, and Um, not everything was fabulous after this particular the fourth installment of the Aliens movie franchise, but it does sort of feel like they are trying to recapture some of this with the Alien series, which I understand is in uh pre-production. It's been developed, it's in pre-production. So this I think is going to be an interesting idea. I also know for a fact that the Alien series is taking place on Earth. So what happens and where in the time spectrum this happens, I don't know, but I think it's going to be interesting. Hopefully, they will incorporate some of the really cool mythology that we get from this fourth movie into what we see in the Alien series. So, my number one pick for movies with four movies is Alien 4, which is called Resurrection.
Didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, I bet you didn't. I'm such an Alien fan. Like I love everything that's Alien that I will even watch Prometheus despite the fact that I really dislike it. But I'll watch it anyway because it is part of the Alien universe. So
As you should.
that tells you how much I love it.
Well, that's it. That's the 10-1. We did the lists.
Yay! That was a good list. We did good.
I think I have a knack for coming up with really off the wall topics. Uh, I don't know
No
if I
one would
should be proud of
dispute
that.
that. No one would dispute that.
And the funny thing is, I have like an entire like spreadsheet full of topic ideas, and generally when it comes down to time to give her homework, I just throw something out there.
Oh, oh, that's exciting.
Because generally I'll like either during the show or right before the show, something will strike me, and inspire me. And I know during last week's show, it's like, man, no one ever talks about fourth movies. Oh, we're going to talk about fourth movies. It's like fourth,
Okay.
only longer.
I kind of like that. I mean, I like where this went. I'm sorry that I didn't understand the homework at the beginning, but I do feel like we saved or I saved my part of the list. Not your part of the list was great, but I feel like
It's
I
like
kind of saved some of this from being, why'd you choose that? That's weird. So yeah.
I like to think it's what you're like. I saved my part of the list, but Josh, your list was just straight up garbage. So uh, there was no saving that.
Stop.
No, I think we both delivered on the goods tonight with admittedly an odd topic, or should I say an even topic.
It was fun. This was a fun topic. I do like it.
And I like the fact that we kind of got to spread the love for a lot of different types of movies, and that's what I like to think this is all about, where we talk about the things that we love.
Yeah.
So how about I'll go over my list, and then you can go over your list and give us next week's homework.
Sounds good.
All right, for 10-1, the fourths. My number 10, Vegas Vacation. Number 9, Fast and Furious. Number 8, Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. Number 7, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Number 6, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Number 5, Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol. Number 4, Rocky 4, America, the America movie. Number 3, Avengers Endgame. Number 2, Star Trek 4. And number 1, Mad Max Fury Road. I will say this, I did a little bit of tiny bit of digging, and someone asked, George Miller, is Fury Road a continuation? Is it the fourth movie? And Do you know what George Miller's response was?
What?
Well, without quoting him, I'll just paraphrase. It was, "Shut up."
Okay. Well, I guess that answers that. Thank you very much, George Miller. That was super helpful.
He says that he's not gonna basically say one way or the other whether or not it's a direct continuation, even though there's some lineage involved, some costuming involved that appears in previous movies. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Jen, tell us about your list for tonight.
Okay, my list starts out with number 10, Police Academy Citizens on Patrol. Number 9, Terminator 4 Salvation. Number 8, Star Trek The Voyage Home. Number 7, Death Race 3 Inferno. Sorry that it's 3, but that's how they named it. Number 6, The Pink Panther The Return of the Pink Panther. Number 5, Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope. Number 4, George Romero's Land of the Dead. Number 3, the Bride of Chucky. Number 2, Evil Dead. And number 1, Alien Resurrection.
All right, so
And
tell us about next week's homework.
Do you want? Okay, so next week's homework. Now, tell me if you have any questions because this is going to be a little bit not tricky, but this is going to be, I think, a fun one. So next week we are going to present our top 10 lists of puzzle films. That is not films where they sit around and do a jigsaw puzzle, but films where we, the audience, are not clued in on what is happening in the film and it comes together like a puzzle. So, would you like maybe a sampling, an idea?
Please.
Okay. And one of the and this actually might end up being on my list, I don't know. Would be The Cube. Have you ever seen the movie Cube?
Is that the one where the people are in the cube?
It is the one with people are in the cube and they don't know why and they have to just keep going from room to room and there's all these weird things happening in each room. That would be an example of a puzzle film.
So
Another
it's
example,
like, well, there's a bigger picture involved.
correct, but it could be as simple as do you remember the movie Memento?
I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, there's a movie called Memento where he basically starts out at the beginning of the movie. He is completely amnesiac and he has to keep putting together the last 5 minutes of his life through these Polaroids. And you go backwards in time to figure out what it is that happened. That would be another example of a puzzle movie. But there are many, many other. I mean, this is a huge, giant genre. So this could be just about anything. For hopefully you won't choose this movie, but one of the biggest ones one of the most iconic ones that I can think of would be Inception, where the entire world is basically, is this a puzzle? Is this what happened here? What is it? We, the audience, don't understand what's happening until the very end. And even then, do we really understand what actually just happened? I don't know. So does that make sense?
As much as I love Inception, that probably won't make my list because I'm not sure how to explain it.
Inception is a crazy movie. It is a very crazy movie, and it definitely it's multi-genre. But I think more than that, it requires a lot of explanation. But I can think of 9 or 10 just right off the top of my head, which are like puzzle movies where just we the audience at the beginning of the movie basically have to either figure out what's happening because we really don't know, and it doesn't unfold in a classic narrative style. It unfolds in the form of a puzzle. Somebody says something, we get a clue from that. Somebody says something else, we get a clue from that. Or they go to a place and we remember that this is supposed to play prominently in something else. Those kinds of movies.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That sounds tricky.
I think it'll be fun to put together. I think it'll be a puzzle to put together. We'll unpuzzle it next week.
That we will. And you know what? Sometimes after doing the show, I sleep.
Yeah, I can imagine why.
When I sleep, I imagine the the dinner that I'm going to have to make tomorrow because you have to be prepared. So, Jen, I love movies and I love to cook. Is there any website that can marry the two together?
Hey, if you are interested in some really cool ideas to cook up for your next meal and you also want to watch a movie with it, hop over to moviesandmeals.com. There's always something cooking over there. They don't always correlate with our 10 to 1 list, but hey, there's lots of fun stuff. I will just make the suggestion that for this week, even though it didn't have 4 movies in it, that, well, even though it's not the 4th movie, that you make Ripley's Alien Eggs, because that was my number one choice for me this year, or this particular list. And of all of the recipes that I make, Ripley's alien eggs are always fun. You could put anything inside of the alien eggs, and it's super, super disgusting and great. Your kids will love it. So, moviesandmeals.com.
And I'll recommend throwing hot dogs on a running engine block.
Oh, hey, that's a good one. I like that one.
It's for my number one, Mad Max Fury Road. And drink some water.
Drink some water. Mother's milk. I mean, if you can find it, but if not, just drink cow's milk and pretend. It's really cool.
Okay. That if you're interested in my sultry voice, you can always listen to more of me if you go to watchyomedia.com and find all the pertinent social links. Go to all the social media pages, hit the like button, and get updated on whenever we go live, and buy stuff. There's a Patreon page over there linked at watchyomedia.com, but I'd much prefer you have something tangible to hold in your hands. That's just me. Doesn't mean less money for all of us involved. Yeah, it does. But you know what? And I would trade that just for you to be able to have the satisfaction of holding something in your hand for the money that you felt in your heart, to donate to the cause. So that is the much preferred method if you go to watchyomedia.com. I like the designs there. Maybe you will too. Last week we finally made the announcement. It made it official. Let's see if I could bring up that graphic for the bit of a there it is. You ready for this, Jen?
I'm ready.
As you know, I do the podcast every Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And on May 5th, Friday, May 5th, we will have Whitney and Adams,
Yay!
costumer from We Have a Ghost, Happy Death Day to You, and Freaky, as well as a slew of other movies. We're going to be talking about costuming.
Also, may I just say that picture makes Whitney extremely stylish, super awesome. You look fabulous.
I absolutely agree. And I guess it does help to have a sense of fashion.
I would definitely agree. This is the reason that I don't do costuming, because I basically sit around in my PJs all day. So, yeah, I have no fashion sense at all.
I go to work, I just put on my work shirt, and yep, that's that. Same stuff I sleep in.
I guess I do wear stylish PJs, though. I mean, I go to great lengths to make sure that they look good, but, they're still PJs, so,
you had to go in that. That'd make me sound like a slob.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. This is going to be great. This is almost better than next week being May the 4th. So that's awesome. It's going to be a great follow-up to May the 4th with May the 5th and Whitney. Awesome.
And also Cinco de Mayo, Guardians of the Galaxy starts next week. It's going to be a busy week next week.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Well, thank you all for joining us here tonight, or thank you for downloading the 10 to 1 podcast. And by the way, if you do that, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe. Let all the people know what you think about 10 to 1. After all, we know it's the internet's favorite movie-centric list podcast, and maybe it's time you tell everybody that
Certainly is the
we could just
longest.
do.
But we're always
Yeah,
looking to
yeah.
improve. So, next week, maybe 4 hours. Who knows? Tune in and find out.
I guess the only thing left to do is find this little. There we go. And the only thing left to do is say goodnight, Jen.
Hey, good night, Jen.
Doesn't get old. Good night.